Howdy everyone. Today we'll be learning about the MRP, which is also called the Materials Requirement Planning. Before we get into the details, let's take a look at our lesson objectives. By the end of the session, you will have gained several insights into number one, understanding what the MRP actually is, and also understanding how it fits into a broader production planning system. This will give you a clear picture of MRP's role in manufacturing planning. And second, we will understand what information is required for the MRP and where this information comes from. And understanding these inputs is crucial for grasping how the MRP actually works. The third, fourth, fifth lesson objectives are related to BOM, which will be covered in the next video. But the first two objectives over here are related to what an MRP is and how it works, and that is what we'll be seeing in this current video. Yes. So now let's understand what the MRP is with an example. So imagine you're running a car manufacturing company, and the question is, how do you go from a broad idea of what cars you want to make to actually having the right parts at the right time to build those cars? So that is what the MRP helps us with, and let's walk through it step by step. So at the top of the planning hierarchy, we have the production plan. This is where we make decisions about product families. And in our car company, we might say next year we are going to produce 100,000 sedans, 50,000 SUVs, and 25,000 trucks. So notice that at the planning or at the family level, we are not going into specific models yet, but we are just talking about broad categories or the families of products. Next, we move down this plan and we go to master scheduling or the MPS. And this is where we start to get more specific about what models we are building. For example, within our sedan family, we might plan to produce 60,000 units of Model A and 40,000 units of Model B. And before we finalize this as our master schedule, we need to consider two important factors. The first one is forecasting sales. So we need to look at market trends and predict which models are likely to be more popular. Maybe we've already noticed that Model A is likely to sell more than Model B. That is why we are selling 60,000 units of Model A and only 40,000 units of Model B. But the essence here is that we need sales or some reliable way to forecast how much we need to produce before we finalize that is the quantity we need to produce for the master schedule. And the second factor affecting the master schedule is rough cut capacity planning. And this is where we, after determining what sales we need, we then move on to the rough cut capacity planning. And this is a quick check to make sure we actually have the resources to meet our production goals. So we go ahead asking questions like, do we have enough assembly lines? Or do we have enough manufacturing stations? Or do we have enough engineers to achieve whatever sales or master schedule that we need to do? So that those are the type of questions that come up at the rough cut capacity planning level. And these two, the sales and the rough cut capacity planning, are the major factors affecting the master schedule. Next, once we've confirmed the capacity that we need to produce, that is the master schedule, next we go on to the MRP and we start to go more detailed or specific. This is where I would say rubber really meets the road, so to speak. And the MRP takes our high-level plan from the MPS and breaks it down into detailed requirements for materials and components. For instance, if we are planning to produce 60,000 Model A sedans, MRP will calculate exactly how many tires, engines, doors, and other components we actually need. It may tell us that we need, for example, let's say we are manufacturing 60,000 sedans. So we require 240,000 tires because each sedan has 4 tires. We need 60,000 engines. We need around 200,000 doors and so on. So the MRP calculates the exact number of components that we require to achieve our master schedule. And to recap, we started with a broader production plan at the family level. Then we created a master production schedule at the next level. And the main inputs to the master schedule or the MPS were the sales. And the main constraints affecting the master schedule was the rough cut capacity planning. Finally, we use the MRP to determine the exact components and materials we need to execute our plan. And this step-by-step process ensures that our production planning moves from a broad strategic decision level to a more narrow actionable level. And finally, once we have the MRP, we move on to the shop floor scheduling, which is essentially translating the MRP into a day-to-day manufacturing operation. So this slide summarizes the key functions of the MRP and how it fits into the bigger picture. First and foremost, MRP is all about timing and quantity. So it determines when and how much to order each end item, the sub-assemblies, the components, and the raw materials to satisfy the MPS. So in our car example, MRP would figure out not just how many engines we need, but when we need to order them to keep a production line running smoothly. So now let's break this overall objective down into a few key points. So MRP first, it calculates only the dependent demands. So remember how we decided to manufacture 60,000 Model A sedans. So MRP takes that information and calculates exactly how many of each component we need. So if each car requires 4 tires, MRP will calculate that we need 240,000 tires. This is called a dependent demand because the demand for the tires depends upon the number of cars we are producing. And next, MRP reflects the current state of orders and materials in the plant. It's constantly updating based on what's actually happening on the factory floor. For example, let's say a shipment of engine gets delayed or it's not being manufactured correctly in a factory. And or let's say we also have an excess number of doors. Now the shipments are moving much faster. So MRP takes all these factors into account and it adjusts its recommendations accordingly. Next, MRP drives internal production. Based on its calculations, MRP creates a detailed schedule for our factory. It may tell us to start assembling the engines on Monday, the body frames on Tuesday, and so on. So this ensures that all the parts of our production process are extremely synchronized. And finally, the MRP integrates production with the purchasing and upstream supply chain operations. It's not just focused on what's happening. MRP is not just focused on what's happening inside our factory, but it's also telling our purchasing department when to order materials from suppliers, ensuring that we have what we need when we are going to manufacture or assemble any particular part. So these are a few important factors about the MRP. So this slide is crucial because it shows us how the MRP acts as a central hub and how it coordinates with various departments in a manufacturing plant. And to illustrate the concept, let's stick with our car manufacturing company example. So let's start at the top of our slide where we have the production and inventory planning or the MPS. So remember that when we decided to manufacture 60,000 Model A sedans and 40,000 Model B sedans, this is the information coming from the MPS and it is one of the inputs to the MRP. Now, the second input to the MRP is from the purchasing department. The MRP tells the purchasing department exactly what to order and when. For example, if we need 240,000 tires for our Model A sedans, MRP might instruct purchasing to order 60,000 tires each week for the next 4 weeks. And the MRP makes sure that it considers the lead times. So if tires take 2 weeks to arrive, the MRP will trigger these orders 2 weeks before we actually need them so that the tires are ready to be assembled on the production line. The purchasing team also gives a lot of inputs to the MRP in the form of lead times. It tells us if we order a particular part, how long will it take to come? The lot size, what are the minimum batch sizes in which parts need to be ordered, and so on. So the purchasing team gives a lot of inputs to the MRP, and the MRP in turn gives a lot of outputs to purchasing regarding what should be ordered and when. Third is the shop floor, and this is where the actual assembly happens. So the MRP provides a detailed production schedule to the shop floor. It might say start assembling 1000 Model A chassis on Monday, install the engines on Tuesday, and so on. So this step-by-step instruction ensures that our production line moves smoothly, and the shop floor then in turn provides several other inputs to the MRP. The first one is the lead time. So how long does it take for each part to be internally manufactured in our shop floor? If engine, let's say, takes 4 weeks to get manufactured, the MRP will adjust its production plan accordingly. The second is again lot sizes, and the lot sizes tell the minimum batch size or the quantities in which the products are produced in the shop floor per week or per manufacturing shift. The third is the work in progress or the WIP. So this tells us how the shop floor activities are progressing. So let's say the engine manufacturing is actually going very slow on the shop floor and they are being delayed by 2 units per hour at a constant rate. So this information will feed into the MRP. So the MRP knows that we are not sticking to our actual production plan and it will change the production plan accordingly within its internal system. So the work in progress is a key metric that is being tracked 24/7 and this acts as another input to the MRP. The fourth input to the MRP is the warehouse. The MRP constantly communicates with the warehouse to know the current inventory levels. So if we suddenly discover, let's say we have more 100,000 tires in our inventory, the MRP will just adjust its orders accordingly to avoid any overstock. Finally, the MRP collaborates very closely with the engineering team, which is very similar to what the design team does. So the engineering department provides the bill of materials to the MRP, and if, let's say, the engineering team makes any design change, for example, the engineering team is going to update the type of headlights we use in model A. This will be updated in the BOM, and the MRP will automatically adjust its calculations and orders that it makes to the purchasing team. So the bill of materials give the MRP team or the MRP document the number of components that need to be manufactured or ordered from the purchasing team. So to summarize, all the blue lines in this flowchart are the inputs of the MRP. And now for the outputs, let's focus on the two red lines. The first is the planned order release. So these tell us when to order a particular component and when. For instance, the MRP will tell the purchasing team order 5,000 steering wheels on July 1st. And this is an order that is sent from the MRP so that we stick with our production plan. And the second output is the planned production order release. So this tells our shop floor what to produce and when. For example, the MRP might tell the shop floor, start assembling 5,000 Model A cars on July 15th. So this makes sure that the activities happening on the shop floor stick with our overall production plan. And by coordinating all these elements, the MRP ensures that we have the right parts at the right time to build our cars efficiently in our example. And it prevents any situations where we have everything to build a car except for one crucial component which could halt our entire production line. So overall, this flowchart shows how the MRP coordinates with several departments in the company, and it shows what are the inputs required for the MRP and what are the outputs coming out of this MRP system.